Hey, what's up, Internet? It's actually like day 4 of Heist. Typically, I make League Start videos starting from day 1, except this time I didn't League Start Hierophant Totems. I actually League started a Gladiator that was doing Shattering Steel, and so I wasn't really making League Start videos for that because I wasn't sure how I was going to go, and I don't really have a guide for any of that stuff. And long story short, I just didn't find it that fun. I also then tried like a self-cast Freezing Pulse Assassin, which just reminded me how much I don't really like self-casting in this game, despite all their changes. So ultimately, I just went back and whipped up a Hierophant. I was playing Holy Flame Totems like usual at League Start, and I expected to stay as Holy Flame Totems for a while because of this change to Soul Mantle, where they had made curses applied by Soul Mantle have 80% increased effect. This wasn't in the patch notes. I have a video up on my channel, which is probably going to get taken down now because part of the reason I'm recording this today is that they hotfix Soul Mantle today, and even though the item still says increased effect, because it's a server-side hotfix, this is actually applying the curses with 80% more effect, and since more is a multiplier, we can still use 100% reduced effect of curses to reduce the base effect of a curse to 0, at which point more effect is just multiplying that 0 base. And so basically the build is back in action, long story short. We can now use the 2 Kikuzaros and the Signum of Thought node again and mitigate the effect of Soul Mantle curses, thankfully. So we're back on track, even though it's a few days into the league. And since I lost a lot of time re-rolling those characters, we're not too far into the Atlas yet. I just have like my first 4 Watchstones and a decent amount of like 58 maps done. Basically, the second they hotfix this stuff, though, I switch back into Freezing Pulse Totems. And I didn't have a lot of currency, obviously, because I had re-rolled twice at League Start. We picked this up today on stream, thankfully. But everything you see here, I bought this in total for like 40 chaos or under, basically. I made this myself. I just bought a cheap Soul Mantle. I had like 2 sockets or something, and 5 linked it myself. Had this from Story. The Kikuzaros are always like 1 or 2 chaos or something. I bought some Pool Heartes gloves like usual, with the cold res and damage with hits against shield enemies. This was like 3 chaos or 4 maybe. The boots for 3 or 4. This was like a 1 or 2 chaos belt. The wands, as usual, they're always really cheap at League Start because people just get these incursion bases and they just chuck them on the trade site. So these Topatantes wands with the cold damage and cold damage spells in 1 prefix. These are like 2 chaos wands. The most expensive piece here actually wound up being this helmet, which isn't that great, but it had Freezing Pulse prod speed, even though it's only 20%. I think it was 7 chaos, which was a little more than I wanted to spend, given that the life roll was pretty bad, but I needed to fix my resists in that first swap to Freezing Pulse, and it seemed like a decent spend. And then I think we dropped a few chaos, like 5 maybe on a 19 self flag. I don't remember how much that was. All told, though, it was like, I don't even think I had 40 chaos when I started, so it couldn't have been more than that. And I haven't spent any of my currency. Well, actually, the one thing I did buy was that Wise Oak. That was only like 4 or 5 chaos at 14%. And yeah, so things are okay. There is one thing I will warn you about, which is that even so, they've hotfixed Soul Mantle so that it's 80% more effect, right? We're still okay there. Do remember though that with part of their curse changes, when you roll a curse on a map, so like let's say this said players are affected by vulnerability, it'll also say with increased effect, and the amount of the increased effect changes with the map tier. I think it's 20, 40, and 80% increased effect for white, yellows, and reds respectively. And that does mean that the curse applied by the map is going to conflict with your reduced effect of curses, and you're still going to take some magnitude of that curse when we're using this setup, right? So if I'm at a yellow map and I roll a curse, it's going to be 40% increased effect. I'm going to have 100% reduced, leaving me with 60% reduced effect of the map curse. So obviously, the curse is actually going to apply to me at 40% effectiveness, which is not great. It depends on which curse it is, really. So if it's vulnerability or temp chains, those can be kind of annoying even at 40% effect or 20%, or sorry, 80% effect. if you're in a red map. But if it's an elemental curse like frostbite or elemental weakness, as long as you're like slightly overcapped, you know, it's not that hard. I could definitely do a lot better than the resist I have, and I'm just over, you know, 5 to 7 over my resist here, 5 to 8. Because we're running the Wise Oak, though, I mean, this is a Bismuth flask, we also have plus 35 more elemental resist whenever we have our flasks up. So it's sort of like a pseudo curse flask that doesn't interfere with our self-flagellation. And this will take care of most of the resist penalties you get from the resist curses. So I wouldn't worry about those too much. But you might consider rerolling temp chains in particular. You can probably do vulnerability if you're a little bit careful. I think we'll jump into a map and walk and talk. I haven't done this map yet. And it just needs to be out right here. I think what we'll talk about here is Heist because, truth be told, it's been kind of a rough league start, huh? The first couple of days there were a lot of bugs, and while I really like the amount of effort that it looks like it went into the characters and like the writing for all the new Heist stuff, it reminds me of Betrayal a lot in that regard. Actually, it unfortunately just wasn't working right, and then even the parts that were working correct technically, like the way the alert system worked, they just weren't that fun. Right, you were encouraged basically to engage with the guards, and a lot of times you don't really have a choice whether you're going to get spotted by a guard or not. Like on the Templar maps and the Smuggler maps, there's a bunch of enemies you're just going to engage. There's no way to see them coming, or they're just too close to a door or something. The problem is that you get alert for killing them. So even if you kill them immediately, you get the same amount of alert as if they follow you around for the entire map. And so a lot of people were playing tanky builds, and they were just dragging these mobs all over the map and not wanting to kill them, because then you wouldn't increase your alert level nearly as much, which is just really stupid, gameplay, right? Nobody wants to do that. Unfortunately, it wasn't too effective to try and play what might have felt like the more thematic way, right? Trying to sneak around corners and stuff. It just doesn't work that well. The nice thing is that in a post today, they talked about how they're going to hotfix stuff, and one of the things that they are removing, I don't think the hotfix is live as of the time I'm recording this video. I haven't checked in about 45 minutes. But by tomorrow, by the time you probably are watching this video, they'll have hotfixed it to where killing enemies doesn't increase your alert. So your alert meter is mostly going to be about taking care to not get hit by certain environmental things that increase alert, like the little elemental sentries in the robot maps, like how they look like totems. But mostly it's going to be about choosing which chests you go for, right? Do you want to take one of the big room chests that cause a lot of alertness, or do you just want to pick off the smaller chests and try to use your trinket bonuses, which are more effective generally on the smaller chests, right? These have like chance to receive additional unique items, chance to duplicate currency, things like that. You're going to get more rewards out of the smaller chests in total because they don't increase your alert as much. But you might get certain targeted rewards that you really want out of the big chests. So that's what it's going to be more about, I think, after the hotfix. Obviously, there's been a bunch of other hotfixes too to things like just bugs, and they're also they're also reducing some of the danger of escaping heists, which are pretty rippy right now, to be honest. Excuse me, the dangers of live recording. Opening doors, basically, in particular, is insanely scary in some of those maps, depending on how full your alert meter is when you actually crack the glass at the end. There can be a lot of mobs, especially on like Templar and robot maps, when you have to open doors on the way out as they try to block you. I mean, if you've done any of the heists, you've experienced how dangerous those can be. So they're going to be toning that down, reducing the amount of rares that can add to the door on your way out, and also making the enemies kind of stagger their attacks and not all blast you all at once as soon as you open a door, which will be nice. So I think in the league start updates that I do after this, we'll probably do some heists, so it'll be a little bit more fun. I've got a fair amount of them saved up. I've done quite a few of them actually, despite how many I've got sitting around. Even the Grand Heist I've done a fair amount of. And they're okay even right now if you just kind of bolt to the exit, or bolt to the artifact thing. And then once you get there and you've cleared everything and you know how much alerts left, you can kind of go back and pick a couple chests off if you want. But I'm interested to see if they rebalance the cost of revealing the secondary wings in these grand blueprints, because they're really expensive. It costs a lot of markers to unveil an extra wing. But it's usually, I think, going to be worth it on the really nice maps. It basically adds an entire second map to the Grand Heist with its own alert bar and everything. So if there's a heist target that has like a really nice artifact, right? Like maybe it's replica uniques or alt quality gems or something you really want, you can open a second wing and get 2 sets of those kind of rewards, you know? But I'm glad I waited a little bit to run too many of these things, just because I had a feeling with how upset people were and how awkward it was. They were going to change it pretty fast, and they have. They're also going to increase the drop rate of the rogue loot, which is good. A lot of the rogue loot you get, especially early on in Heist, has like a really high job requirements right now. So it seems like they fixed that, and they're just increasing the drop rate of the rogue loot in general, which will also help with like how much you can customize your rogues for the runs and make them easier and more rewarding. But yeah, that's where we are. It's like day, what, 4? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And the build is basically back to normal for the most part. We did get nerfed in the context that we can't stack as many curses as we used to be able to, right? It's a little bit harder to stack curses because it's picking duplicates just as often, essentially, out of the smaller pool, but there's only 9 to choose from. So you can't quite stack as many before you fight a boss like Uber Elder or Cirrus or something like that. So the first like 10 seconds, like 8 to 10 seconds of a fight are a little bit nerfed. And in general, you probably have like 1 curse on you less than normal while you're mapping, but it's not really impactful. And some of that we make back in Sniper's Mark. There was a video on my channel that I actually took down when we found out that the Soul Mantle had been nerfed, not in the patch notes, and so I took it down to make sure people weren't, you know, misled into playing this and finding out it didn't work. But I'm going to put that video back up to sort of let people see the summary of the 3.12 changes now that Soul Mantle's kind of back to the way it was. The Sniper's Mark is really nice though, and even though I still use Frostbite while I'm generally mapping and stuff to trigger my Arcane Surge, I do try to put Sniper's Mark up on the big bosses, because the marks are not resisted by bosses whatsoever. Normally, these curses are reduced by 1/3 against regular map bosses and stuff, and then against the Guardians and things, they're reduced by 2/3. So they're much weaker against guys like Cirrus and Elder, whereas these marks are going to be 100% effective even against Cirrus. So this replaced the old Proj weakness, so that curse is completely gone. And I do think that we're going to want to get back into Whispers of Doom more than we used to get this +1 curse. So this is probably going to be our ideal anointment at the high end of things. Probably after I get a Pandemonious or some really nice +1 cold, +1 int, which usually doesn't happen. It's much easier to just get a Pandemonious, I think. And so I'll probably do that. Especially Blind is also going to be really valuable this league. So Pandemonious is going to be my recommendation on Amulet, because escaping the heist is your big sort of rip vector right now, right, for the league. Delirium still exists, and Blind is still really good in Delirium, and now Heist is going to have some really high-end content where there's a lot of really tanky and dangerous mobs on your escape, and Blind is going to be really effective there too. So I'll definitely be trying to go for a Pandemonious and then getting Whispers of Doom, so that even though we won't be utilizing Whispers of Doom all the time, it's going to be worth stacking Frostbite on top of on top of Sniper's Mark, sorry, for big bosses like Cirrus, so we can get a lot more effectiveness out of our curses. Otherwise, things are pretty much exactly as they were. And as you saw on that map, you know, this level of gear is really not expensive, especially even a few days into the league. On a 5 link, on a couple of 1 or 2 Chaos Wands, and you know, it's just as effective as it was before. And it's actually pretty good for Heist. You know, being able to toss totems through doorways that look dangerous, and being able to freeze everything, all that stuff is really nice for staggering damage, which is really the danger. Like, burst damage in Heist is what's going to kill you, I think, even after their hotfixes. So to me, it still feels like an incredibly strong build. The single target, we probably even got away with a little bit of a buff in the context of Sniper's Mark being much better than the old projectile weakness against the boss fights that really want a lot of single target DPS like Cirrus. And it really just didn't nerf us at all, really, in mapping, outside of that one change when it comes to maps having curses on their affix list. Do keep that in mind. You know, don't think you can dive into a temporal chains map in red tier if you don't have a reflection and not have any effective temporal chains. You will be disappointed. But yeah, that's where we're at. I just wanted to make another update video. I kind of missed doing it, and I kind of missed totems, and I'm happy to be back on it, frankly, after my little excursion into melee and self-casting, which didn't work out so hot this league. But I'll probably be making update videos not every day, but every couple of days, 2 to 3 days at most, as we get into more heists and stuff, just to see if anything changes, and just because I like doing them. Anyway, if you want to catch me, I'll be streaming roughly every day, at least for the next week or two at least. After that, it might be more like 3 or 4 days a week. But I'll be streaming a lot at twitch.tv/WallachTV. And if you got any questions, you can drop them in the comments, or you can leave them in the forum thread for the build guide. I check that every day. Anyway, I hope you guys are enjoying Heist. I'm looking forward to the hotfixes tomorrow, and I will see you later. Peace.